This is a great panel. We had a lot of fun doing this a couple times yesterday. We have it a couple of times today, and so we're glad to see you here today. So let me acknowledge a couple of people and do a couple of thank yous. We'll set a couple of ground rules for the conversation, and then we'll get right into really the meat of what we want to do, and that's a lot of questions from you and a lot of answers from our panel. So first, let me thank our faculty member, Dr. Dave McCone, who's sitting up here, as well as our cadets for their hard work to help put this together and bring this panel to NCLS. So how about a round of applause for them and the work they've done. Then I'd like to acknowledge a couple of people with us. Colonel Joan Looney, who's sitting up here. Joe, if you can raise your hand. Colonel Looney is leading the transgender implementation team here at the United States Air Force Academy, a great resource if you have questions about policies or other issues going on with the transition to transgender service and what's going on there. General Awaken, sir, thank you for being here. Joan Awaken is our retired permanent professor of the philosophy department and a big reason why we have NCLS and CCLD here at the Air Force Academy. Sir, thank you for joining us. And Dr. Chris Lukey, who is here, who is the director of our Center for Character and Leadership Development. Thank you for joining us. A couple of resources. I don't know if anybody from Blue Alliance or Spectrum is here who would like to raise their hand. I see Kathleen Robbins back here. Kathleen, you can raise your hand really hard. One of our cadets from Spectrum up here. Kathleen is a 1968 graduate of the Air Force Academy. Kathleen, thank you for being here. And I'd also like to introduce Colonel Retired Meyer. So Colonel Meyer is up here. Colonel Meyer is a 45-year transgender veteran of the United States government, served and retired as a colonel, as well as now serves as a faculty member here in our physics department. Most of us know Colonel Meyer in most of our day-to-day life as Mark, but Marcy came to join us today. So Marcy, good to have you here as part of our audience today. These are all great resources if you have questions after the panel or after NCLS if you're looking for answers about things going on with transgender service. We're going to introduce our panel here in a minute, but let me talk about the conversation. The whole purpose of this session is to have a conversation about understanding. And that's the title, that's what this is all about. We want to focus on that key word of understanding. And as such, we want to have a respectful dialogue in this room today as we try to learn to understand about this issue and how it faces our military. So a couple of ground rules I'd like to ask of you as we have our conversation. First and foremost, I'd ask us all to be polite and respectful. That's in line with our conference of respect for human dignity as we have a conversation. We understand very clearly that this is not a comfortable topic for a lot of people, and that's okay. It hasn't been a comfortable topic for me all of my life. But by engaging in the conversation, by engaging in the process, it can become comfortable and we can understand what's going on as we think about transgender military service. Second, I'd ask you to be a good listener. Listen to understand. Listen to try and maybe garner a perspective about this issue that you haven't thought about before. So listen to understand. I'd ask you to be careful of stereotypes. It's really easy to stereotype one group or another as we're having conversations about social justice issues. So let's all be cautious of stereotypes. And finally, and most importantly, be engaged. Be a part of the conversation. Be a part of the dialogue as we work our way through the discussions on this issue. So those are the things I would ask of you. So let me now take a moment to introduce our panel. But I'm going to do it in a little bit different way. We're going to do it through a film. Actually, before I do that, let me stop and talk about some policy. If you'll put the policy slide up, I'm going to do this because all of you are sitting there going, well, what's the policy right now? Or at least many of you are. So let me touch on this really, really quickly. A session policy. First of all, let me say about policy. We are awaiting from the White House an update on this policy. The Secretary of Defense owes to the White House information actually today. We don't know if we'll hear something from the White House today or not on where this policy is going to go for the Department of Defense. But the policy as it currently sits in summary is here. For accessions, these are for people who want to come into the military who are transgender. They have to be stable in their preferred gender identity for 18 months before entry. And if that is the case, they can go through the process with their physician as well as through the DoD's medical entrance process, and they can be entered into the service in their preferred gender, and if they enter, that they would carry that gender with them into the service. That's the accession policy. I'm going to skip a bullet and go down to cadets. Cadets and midshipmen who are in the room, you are under the accession policy. And what that means in short is there really is no way to transition while you are a cadet, because you wouldn't have the opportunity for that 18 months of stability prior to commissioning as a cadet. So currently for cadets, there is no way to transition while in one of the academies. For retention, you're going to see in a moment that we have openly serving transgender military service members, and that policy has not changed. Members can transition currently while on active duty, and they can serve while on active duty if they are currently serving. And that's the policy in a nutshell. If you have questions on that when we get to Q&A, we'd be happy to entertain those questions for you. Now let's get to the film. So to introduce our panel today, we want to show you this.
My name is Logan Ireland. I am a senior airman in the United States Air Force, and I didn't tell my age. My name is Logan Ireland. I'm 27. My name's Logan Beck Ireland. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a senior airman in the United States Air Force, currently stationed in Kandahar, Afghanistan.
Hey. I miss you.
I miss you.
Your hair looks good today.
Your face looks good today.
How's the wedding planning going?
My cousin's gonna be doing the cupcakes like we wanted. So exciting. But tell me about your deployment.
Every time we go to a different location, there's always a whole bunch of kids around. And I had my sleeves rolled up, and they were pointing to my tattoo, like they wanted to see it. I pointed to the ring, and I said, Madame. They get that that's my wife. And then they wanted my ring. Go figure. Like, no.
I love you.
Love you. So what did your commander say? Was she like all surprised and stuff?
My commander was a little surprised when I told her. I mean, she didn't really seem too fazed by it. I told her that I was transgender, that I was assigned female at birth. This deployment has really opened up a lot of doors for me and other transgender members that are trying to serve in silence. She seemed all for it.
Contact right!
Well, my mind is completely wired like a guy. Everything I think about, operate, my mannerisms, it's completely male, 100%. So we have 4 bathrooms, and basically everybody just pairs up with one. There's 3 right here. Turn the light on. And this is the one I usually use with one of the other guys. And it locks. Has everything you need. But I just keep all my shots in here and put them in a safe container for afterwards. It's very inconspicuous. And in case somebody was to go in there, I have my prescription already put in it, so they can see that it's legal. There's not a lot of people that know that I'm transgender. It's very much on a need-to-know basis. Currently in Afghanistan, there's only a handful, and those people are of higher rank than, of course, the people that I came here with from my home station.
How often do you give yourself a shot?
So it's every Friday. When the other guys ask me what being transgender means, I basically say that it's just being assigned female at birth. Your mind does not come in alignment with your body. After doing it every week for over 3 years, you just kind of get used to it. And that's it. What I like about this deployment is I can be my authentic self. I'm just another guy.
Whereas back home, I'm still seen as female and I go by female regs and standards. Here in Afghanistan, a war zone, it's like a vacation to me because I can be myself in such an austere environment. I will need to tell my commander back in Altus that, look, I am transgender. I stand to lose everything. I stand to lose my career, my future, my foundation. It takes away the service that I've done and that I feel very proudly to have accomplished. It takes all that away.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, is this Lauren?
Yes.
So, the boys just landed in Dallas maybe about 40 minutes ago, and they're getting ready to board soon. Once Logan messages me, I will message you too to let you guys know when they've landed in Lawton, and then we can go from there.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, well, I will talk to you later.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye.
The wives and girlfriends of some of the troops that he deployed with, they've been nothing but wonderful throughout the entire deployment. Funny thing is that they don't know. I'm sure that they know about Logan being transgender, but I'm pretty sure, and I'm almost 100% sure that they don't know that I'm transgender. My name is Leila Viennois. I'm in the United States Army. I'm a healthcare management administration specialist. Been in the military for 12 years. It's a long time. And I'm stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii at Triple Army Medical Center. When I first moved to Hawaii, I had a supervisor who I was able to go to. As long as I came to work and I did what I needed to do, it was perfectly fine. Since then, I've changed supervisors. It's a problem. I've been asked to correct the patients and let them know that they can't use female pronouns. But that in itself causes confusion. The patients are like, "What are you talking about? That is a female." No, that is a male. Hello? Babe.
Where are you?
I'm driving.
Well, I'll message you whenever we leave here, okay?
Yeah, please let me know when you guys are getting ready to get on the bus and head over.
Okay.
Okay, I love you.
Love you. Bye.
That's the bus, Leila.
I always joke around to my friends, that, my lesbian daughter ended up turning out to be my straight son. I have a lot of gay friends and even several gay cousins, but transgender is just not something I've ever heard of. So he had to educate me.
Even my closest friends at work don't know. I mean, we're mechanics, and everybody's got their opinion. They know, my daughter's in the military. It took me a while to come to this point. You know, this didn't happen overnight. I mean, through the growing up years, and when I finally realized the situation, I was just like the guys at work. Same attitude, same, you know, even it was my son, daughter. You know, it was hard for me to accept. But the bottom line is, this is an American going fighting for your liberties that you have here. I don't care what gender you are.
So we go in, and he's like, hey man, I just wanted to just thank you for everything you did in Kandahar. We heard really great things about you, and the first sergeant told me about what's gonna be going on with you. Like, he's like, we have your back 150%, whatever you need to do it. He's like, okay, your blues, you're not wearing them, are you, or are you not? Because you have female blues and those are way out of standards for you. You need to get rid of those. I'm like, no.
So that means?
That means that I get to go buy male blues.
Oh, that's exciting.
That
oh my
is
God,
so
that's
exciting.
so exciting.
That is so exciting.
My heart is like pounding really fast.
I got so excited, like, because that's huge. This is a first to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're telling me to screw dress and now I'm going by male dress and appearance standards too. So I don't have to grow my hair out. And I can have a mustache.
Because the military is such a manly environment, it is way much more difficult for women to transition than it is for men.
Her unit does not support her whatsoever. They see her as male. They make her use the male restroom. They have her going by male regs and standards.
You know, people think that we're different or sick or whatever their opinions are of us, but we are people too, you know? We live our life and we get married like anybody else, and we want kids and we want a house and we do our jobs. And in that, there shouldn't be any problem for us to serve openly, so.
There are a lot of transgender troops. There's over 15,000 of us, but I know a lot personally. They're getting discharged left and right, and these are good people for the military. You worked alongside of me and we served. We went outside the wire together. We had each other's backs together, right? So you didn't see me any different then, don't see me any different now, and please change your opinion on others like me.
Please help me welcome to stage Laila and Logan Ireland. All right, now for the fun part of the presentations. This is Q&A time. We do ask if you have a question that you come to one of the two mics that you see on either side, because we are live streaming this particular session. And if you don't come to the mics, the people who are out there watching this on their computers will not be able to hear your question. So please come to the mics. If you're unable to come to the mics, raise your hands and one of our cadets will bring the microphone to you. So while we get our first people thinking about their questions and coming forward, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask first couple of questions. And the first one is very simple. Please tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And also thank you to the team here and leaders past, present, and future. We really appreciate this humbling experience. So my name's Staff Sergeant Logan Ireland. I'm active duty security forces stationed out at Peterson Air Force Base about 20 minutes away from here. So when I joined the Air Force in 2010, I joined for many of the same reasons that you all joined, right? I was a full-time college student. I was paying college out of my own pocket as a 911 dispatcher, and my education got a little pricey. So I ended up enlisting in the Air Force as security forces in 2010 at the age of 23, and I've loved it ever since, and I'm making a career out of it now. Since I joined in 2010, I've been to 3 different duty stations. I've been deployed twice, been on countless TDYs, and overall it's been a very humbling, joyous experience for me. But that wouldn't have been the case, honestly, if I didn't have leadership backing me up every step of the way when it came to my transition to pre-policy guidance, to post-policy guidance. Having that leadership and steering me in the right direction was pivotal to the success of my career.
Aloha and good morning, everybody. I'm Laila Ireland. I am a 12-year Army veteran, medically retired. I am from Honolulu, Hawaii, if you guys didn't notice the aloha in the beginning. I am the great spouse of this fine young man here. In my career, I deployed twice to Iraq, and now my work includes advocacy and going places to talk to people like you and universities and even the youth about diversity and inclusion in the school spaces and in workplaces, and mostly with a specific emphasis on transgender people in the military. And so through this film, we are able to show the contrast in our situations where his leadership was very supportive and my leadership was completely the opposite, which led me to leave the military. I bleed green. Anybody in the Army here? No? Hey, Army folks. It's so nice to see an Army folk here in the crowd because it's just blue. And I'm green, so. But we are totally excited here, to be here to talk with you guys and listen to what your perspectives are and to share our experience and our journeys with you guys, so thank you.
Thank you very much. So I get to ask the first question as you all are thinking about yours. So I can't imagine, I don't know about you, but I cannot imagine having my personal life put on the screen like that. And even more difficult maybe is, I've been watching this 3 times now with them. I don't know how many times you all have sat there and watched your story unfold. What has changed? How has your life been since this op-doc came out in 2015?
You know, since the op-doc was released in June of 2015, we have been afforded many great opportunities. From this film, we were also able to be invited to the White House Pride reception in 2015 to meet with former President Barack Obama. And the experience in that was just very humbling because he understood our journey. He understood the need for the conversation to be had. And again, you know, my work includes just advocating for active duty folks, veterans, and currently our youth, because you guys are our future leaders, and we have to make sure that we get our point across so you guys can make the right choices in the future, so that we are a very inclusive fighting force.
Absolutely, and you know, when we helped put out this film, we did it with a pretty selfless reason. You know, it's not about us. There were so many people that came before us that were discharged, that ended up getting out of the military, not being able to live an authentic life. Some people aren't here today anymore because they couldn't live that authentic life. So every day when I put on the uniform, I think about those people that came before me that aren't here today to see the success of the policy and going forward. And you know, all of you might be, you know, a commander over me one day in a deployed setting or even home station. So I would hope that I could somehow influence you guys and your leadership to, you know, continue on from there with other people that might, you know, come before me.
Thank you. What questions do you have? Have one right over here on the mic on the right side of us. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us this morning. So I agree that we're all people too, and in the military we've had certain groups, whether it's their gender or ethnicity, that have overcome challenges to serve. So for example, African Americans being able to fly through the red tails, and women being able to fly, such as the wasps. So do you think that change will come for transgenders as well? Because in the video, it seemed that the thing that, Logan, you were judged upon was your ability to do your job. And I'm wondering how come that doesn't apply right now to across the military with transgenders? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So in going forward with this policy, we also have to keep in mind that this was done pre-policy. So going forward with it, our ability to serve should be without question, right? And we should judge somebody on only that, just the character of them serving, not on their gender, ethnicity, race, background, what have you, right? And going forward from here, it really does take that leadership style from the top to have that dignity and respect down throughout all their troops. So I guess that's really like the foot stomp here is that leadership, right? How can we go from here without any more fault or failure so this doesn't happen again?
Over here.
Good morning. I'm Cadet 3rd Class Sean Castillo. I want to start by saying thank you both for your service and your courage and determination. I know it's an inspiration to myself and many others here. So my question is for you. Oftentimes when I'm watching the news or I'm on social media, I'll often see U.S. representatives, other service members, or even my peers make the argument that the military is not a social experiment and that the military should not involve itself in transgender issues. How do you guys respond to that?
So I believe that we are the greatest military in the world. I'm biased because I was in the Army for 12, 13 years. Not just because of that, though. I believe that the American military was built on diversity. And every time we include a different type of person or different type of group, we advance ourselves forward. In my 13 years in my career, each team that I was a part of, every person came from a different place, different background, different culture, different creed, whatever you can think of, they came from all parts of the world. And because of that, that team was the best team that I ever worked with. And so if you want to call the military a social experiment, go for it, right? Because each and every one of you every life is different, every person is different. But the one thing that we do share in common is the mission. And if I were to turn everyone inside out in this room, we would all look the same. We would bleed the same. So it shouldn't be about, oh, this is a social experiment, this is why we need to be inclusive. No, we want to put our best people forward to fight for this country that we so love, right? So be it a social experiment, but I think we should be very diverse and very inclusive to every type of people.
Right, and even more so, what some people don't know is there's actually 19 other allied countries that have had open transgender service since the 90s, and we are the world's greatest military, right? So if we need to stay the world's greatest military, we're an all-volunteer force. We need all hands on deck to make the mission successful, right? I would never want to deny somebody the right to serve if they're able-bodied and they're raising their right hand just like everyone in this room has done to serve their country and potentially give their life. So that's the last thing we would want to do is hold back the United States and going forward in the future.
Thank you. Another question from over here.
Good morning, you both. Lieutenant Colonel Harris, a class 2000 grad. I just want to say I admire your courage, and it's really tough to feel like a minority and stand up for the better good of the group. I know that if you were to come and work for me, if you had the right attitude and you were a good team member, I would support and have your back. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that right there is the leadership style, really, that we need going forward, is just treat people with dignity and respect, like the Airman, Soldier, Sailor, Marine that they are, and going forward, and we're going to have a successful military. So thank you.
Thank you. Over here, please.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you for coming. So I've grown up, one of my youngest brothers is transgender, and explaining that to people can be really difficult sometimes. And so I'm just wondering, from your experience, what's some of the best ways to kind of start those conversations, get people to kind of open their hearts and their minds to understand something that maybe they've never heard or experienced before or seen?
So thank you for that question, and to include family, right? I think everyone here has a close bond with their own family, specifically with mine. When I first came out in 2004 to my family, I identified as a gay male. And coming from a Pacific Islander, Hispanic, Catholic, military background family, 3 strikes, you're out, right? And so I was doomed from the beginning. But when I came out as transgender to my family, the time for them to come around was significantly less. And because of that, the reason why it was so significantly less is because I had to step back and realize there was something different about me coming out as trans. It was that I needed to look at the bigger picture. It wasn't just about me, it was about everyone around me that I also affected. And so I had to be patient in learning with them. And so trying to educate other folks in this journey, in this transition process, can be difficult. And you can talk to your blue in the face, right? But you can only lead the horse to the water. You can't make it drink it. So at some point, you're going to have to say, well, we're going to have to agree to disagree, and I respect your opinions at that, and that's pretty much it. But your responsibility is to continue to advocate for your brother or your sibling, and to continue to love them unconditionally and be there for when they need you. So.
Thank you. Over here, please.
I have a similar question. Cadet Capitelli from Minnesota. So some people are kind of hesitant or unsure about the changes in the military. So we've heard a lot about what to do as a leader, but what do we do to inspire a culture of inclusion amongst our peers and amongst our fellow teammates?
That's a very good question, and thank you for it. I really would look back at history, you know, with African American inclusion and women inclusion, Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and now the transgender repeal. Every decade, it seems like we're progressing and going forward, right? And every decade, we get stronger and stronger, and we bring the best able bodies that are possible in our United States Air Force, in the military in general. So, as far as how we can look at that in a progressive way, that's really the only way we can look at that. And in a leadership, and it goes from peers all the way up to leadership. We need to look at this as this is, you know, not only your military, but my military. And we all raise our right hand the same, right? We all put on our uniform the same and take that oath the same. So really that inclusive, being inclusive is really what we need to look at and like, you know, foot stomp as usual.
All right, while I'm waiting for other people to come up to the mic for a question, I'll have one for you. So there was a 70s pop song, I've Seen the World from Both Sides Now, right? And that kind of describes a transition process to some degree. Talk a little bit about how the world has changed from, you told us a story yesterday about Home Depot that I found that was kind of insightful. Can you talk a little bit about how life is different?
Absolutely. So in this transition, Logan and I can say that we've walked a mile in both shoes, boots and heels, and I don't know if you wore heels. Did you wear heels before? Okay, so he was in band, so no. So prior to my transition and being trying to be a masculine male figure in society, I would go to Home Depot or Lowe's and ask questions and need tools, right? And the clerk would directly answer me. Now we've gone to Lowe's and Home Depot a few times, and I would ask the question, but the clerk would not answer me. They would directly answer Logan. And so I seen a shift in privilege because I guess men who work in hardware stores think that women don't know anything. Well, Logan doesn't know anything about a hammer or a nail.
No, I can attest to that. I don't know the difference between a flathead and a Phillips wrench, screwdriver. See, I don't have a mechanical bone in my body, you know, but that really does just attest to like the different stereotypes between males and females, and that I should automatically know, like, oh yeah, I know what the socket screw wrench thing is and where to. No, I don't. But she asked the question, you know, so please address my wife. You know, I'm just here.
It's really it's different. It's a change in culture because I get to see how I become second, and I think I understand the misogyny. I understand misogyny more. And even if I apply this to the military, women have a harder time having to adjust in society. And even now, we still have that problem. So I'm opening a whole different can, by the way. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, especially with our women who are in the military. Because some of the women I know can do a better job than some of the men I know. And that's just how it is. And so it's very different being in the different shoes, and walking in heels or learning how to walk in heels was a whole mess. But I have mastered it and I'm good to go now. So, but you know, change in culture, I think we need to be we need to recognize the differences, and we need to have those conversations on how we can be more respectful towards each other, and not just to judge someone just because, well, you're female and you don't know nothing about a hammer. Let me show you, I can do this. So.
Thank you. Question over here.
Good morning. So most of us in this room are going to be future leaders and futures commanders. So I was wondering, when dealing with your commanders, if you wouldn't mind sharing the most negative thing that's happened to you, how it affected you, and how you managed to persevere, as well as the most positive reaction you received from one of your commanders and how it affected you.
So for me, I really can talk about the positive leadership, because that's really what I've gotten over my career, is the positive feedback from my leadership. The first thing that I did was to try and facilitate that open line of communication. You know, keeping in mind respect and chain of command, obviously, but let's try and have this fluid conversation with my transition, because I know I'm kind of an oddity or, you know, a new topic in the military, so let's try and work through this together. And early on in my transition, I would ask my commander or whoever was over me, like, you know, listen, I'm born female. It has female on my records, though I look male. Where would you like me to room? Where would you like me to use the restroom at? How would you like me to conduct training? Because I don't want to disrupt morale, readiness, or anything like that. So I left it up to them. And I think that kind of showed them like the respect that they needed and they deserved with how they need to, I guess, guide me in my career. And that's really played through since. And now that my gender marker has changed as male and I'm seeing as male every day, we still have that open line of communication. You know, how best can I, you know, go through my path, you know, and staying as a career airman, you know. So overall, the positive style of leadership really is just having that open line of communication and understanding.
I can speak on the negative side of having leadership. As you can see in the film, it does show the contrast in our situations. My leadership was not so, they weren't so nice. There were a few instances where I would get, because of the physical changes in my transition, there were a few times where I was called into my commander's office and with my first sergeant and my first line supervisor, and immediately walking into the room, I was given a piece of tissue and was asked to wipe my face just to ensure that I wasn't wearing any makeup in uniform. No questions asked, it was just, here you go, I need to see that you're not wearing makeup. And it wasn't once, it wasn't twice, it was several times. I mean, there were other things that made it, to me, seem like, okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong as a stellar NCO, as a stellar soldier. Up until my last tour, my file has been, you know, remarkable. And then I had a change in leadership, and it just wasn't a very pleasant time for me. And so leading up to my medical retirement, my therapist and my doctor told me, you know, they looked at everything that was going on and they said, you can either stay in and fight and essentially lose this battle, because right now there is no guidance and there's no policy for open trans service. So if you were to say that you're trans, you would be out tomorrow. Or you can take a medical retirement and you can retain all the benefits from all the years that you've served in the military. And so at that time, I had to really make a tough decision, because I loved putting on my uniform. I loved being in the military, the camaraderie, the routine. I didn't have to choose my clothes every morning. Choosing this was hard yesterday. You know, so it was, I have pride in being a soldier, and now I have pride in being a veteran. And at the time, Logan and I we just started our relationship. And so I had to weigh my options. And I looked at it as he can fight it from the inside and I can fight the fight from the outside and tack on the veterans and youth side. And so I opted to leave the military, you know, honorably. But that just goes to show that my leadership, because of their personal biases, it was a really tough time, even though I was being transparent, even though I was trying to do everything the right way. Sometimes doing the right thing the right way isn't always the best thing for leadership that isn't very receptive. So it was a tough time.
Thank you. Let's move over to the other mic, please.
Hi, C2C Sarah Cook. I'm kind of a sap for love story, so I was kind of curious if you guys are open to sharing how you guys met and how you developed that relationship.
So we met on Craigslist. I'm kidding, we did not meet on Craigslist. Can we take that off the video? No, we met online through a military, trans-military support group called OutServe. And from that spawned SPARTA, which is Service Members, Partners, and Allies for Respect and Tolerance for All, which we are now leaders in the community. And now there are about 700, over 700 members in this nonprofit organization for trans-military folks. But in 2012, we met online. 2014. So really quick, I'm going to break it down. January 2014, we met formally at a conference in Houston. In March 2014, we started dating. In May 2014, we made it official that we were dating. In June 2014, I invited him to come meet my family in Hawaii. And then July 2014, he decided to come back after 2 days of leaving Hawaii to surprise me with a proposal. And so we got married in May of 2016. He's looking at me like, you better remember this date. But we got married almost 2 years ago, and this year, so every 2 years there's always something in our relationship that's big. And I think this year we are crossing fingers. We get to adopt our first child at the end of the year. So.
Please.
Good morning, CUNC Nicole Slavoski. Again, thank you for coming here and having this open conversation. It's been awesome. Based on your two different experiences with your commanders, what advice would you give going forward to those who aren't as fortunate to have a positive, supportive commander?
The best advice that I can personally give is just to keep on marching forward, okay? Your voice needs to be heard, and it will be heard, right? To not give up. Okay, because again, with each new decade, we grow as a stronger military. And if that commander really isn't willing to listen to you, okay, then use your chain of command. Maybe go to a different peer, or depending on the situation, up-channel it. But make sure your voice is heard, right? Because diversity really is the key to how awesome our military is. You know, we're a melting pot of diversity for a reason in the military. So let's not like stifle anybody or silence anybody with you know, their ideas or creativity or inspirations. So definitely find somebody to hear your voice and go from there with it.
And also, you know, being willing to be open and patient and willing to learn about something that you don't know. It's easy to label something that is different from what we believe and what we are, but being open to learning more about something you know nothing about is key. And with Logan's leadership, they're so transparent with him. They're transparent with me, which is really crazy because I've never had a leadership that was so involved with the spouses as well. And so I think going forward, you know, just being transparent, being open, and willing to learn and being patient.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
The mic is so high for you.
Short girl
I know. I
problems.
got you, girl. Look, these heels.
In addition to being a short girl, I'm also a very emotional person, so I relate on an emotional level. Can you take us through the journey, the emotional journey it has been for you guys, and then especially right now in the time of uncertainty, what's going through your head?
Sure. So as we wait for possible new policy implementation, we really have to remember that you know, I'm not serving because of who sits in the White House, right? I'm serving for the brothers and sisters to my left and to my right, those that came before me, those that will come after me and pave a new way for others, you know, in the military. So as far as you know, it being kind of an emotional journey, you know, it is, but it's also been humbling, and it's one that I wouldn't give up for anything. You know, just like I said earlier, sharing our story wasn't about us. It was to try and make change in the military. I plan on staying in, you know, for a career, so I don't want anything, you know, prohibiting me or anybody like me, you know, going forward with it.
In the beginning of this transition, you know, there was a lack of information, lack of resources for me, and so I had to learn this on my own. Today, our youth and our future leaders have the ability to have someone walk them through this process. But going through this journey hit every single stop on being emotional with work, with the work relationships I had with my family. Like I said, with my family in the beginning, they were not so accepting, but eventually they came around. And so it's been a roller coaster ride for me with emotions, a very emotional roller coaster. And I think embracing even the sad parts and the tough parts was vital to who I am today, because now I can confidently share my story with you and tell you, you know, it really is going to be okay. You just have to keep pushing forward. For some friends that we've had that we've lost along the way, they didn't believe that so much. And I think that the emotional roller coaster transcends any type of situation, any type of circumstance. It can be tough, but if you surround yourself with positive people, positive energy, you can get through it, and it's going to get better.
Hi, good morning. I'm C3C Kaylee Eskley. So my question is about your childhood. Both of you came out in your adult life as transgender. What was it like as children growing up with these preconceived notions of what boys and girls should be? And did you maybe realize that you were transgender then too? Thanks.
Thank you for asking that question. We actually talked about this yesterday. When I was a little boy, there were 3 things that I wanted to be when I grew up. One was a soldier because my dad was in the military. The second was a doctor because my mom was a nurse. And the third was Miss America. And obviously that did not happen. I think I have to be like 6'2" or something. But as far back as I can remember in any memory, I have always thought myself to be a little girl, a female, a woman. In growing up, my parents would tell me, no, you're not. You are a boy. This is how you need to be. Boys don't play with dolls. There was a time during Christmas when I went downstairs and I switched the tags on the Christmas gifts, so my sister would get the Tonka truck and I would get the Barbie. That wasn't a good morning for me. But growing up and remembering all these things and going through them, even my parents and I, we sit and we reminisce about those things. And my mom, she would always say, looking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to acknowledge it because I knew as an adult what can happen to you, and I was afraid of that. At that time when I came out as gay and as trans as well, it wasn't that they didn't want me to be that. They knew that I was happy as that, but they were just fearful of what could happen to me because of the outside perspective in society that just was naive or just ugly to people like us and to our community. So while it was a tough time, it was a good time.
Yeah, and for me, I knew very early on that I was not like most females at all. I remember I have memories of me and my dad. He would work on vehicles outside, and we would listen to like Creedence Clearwater, and I would have my shirt off, as like a little girl. And that was like everything to me. And then growing up, I probably came out as a lesbian around like 11, and I was a horrible lesbian. Like, just couldn't get it right at all. And what that boiled down to was I was never really a lesbian. Like, I really was, a male, but I didn't have that dialogue. I didn't know the language yet about what that was. And it really wasn't until I was in my 20s that I knew like exactly what transgender is. Can this really be a part of my life? Do I have the courage to go forward with this? And I had just enlisted in the military. So where would my future go if I did come out? But I had to take that leap. It was either I serve in silence and I live in silence, or I don't live, right? And you have to make those very real, life-changing decisions for me. But no, as a kid, I had no idea. I was more focused on building Legos and running around and watching my dad build stuff that I obviously didn't, get blessed with that hobby growing up. But yeah, everybody's journey is just a little bit different,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go over here.
Good morning. I was going to ask a similar question about just how that awareness kind of started to manifest, but more from the line of like parents. And so you've spoken about your parents, their roles they played. I thought it was awesome to see your dad and mom, Logan, speaking in the video. But what did they do that either was effective or maybe ineffective in your development, as well as what advice would you have for parents out there now? Like, I'm a father of 2 young girls. Are there things parents can do to get in the way or not be in the way, I guess, signs to look for, if that's the term to use. But I guess what would you, more from a parent perspective, I guess, what was your experience or what would your advice be going forward?
Yeah, so obviously I'm not a parent. We have 2 cats and that's about it. But, with my parents in particular, what can we do for you, Logan? Like, we're going to try, with calling you Logan, and we're going to try and use male pronouns, but you have to be patient. And I had to realize that too. Like, I'm transitioning, but they're also transitioning too, because they knew me as such for 24 years of my life. So it took patience on both part and really learning and understanding with both my parents and myself. I would say the best advice is just to listen. Just to listen, understand, and love them unconditionally, because they're going to want the same thing from you.
Over here, please.
Hi, Steve Simon, Air Force Academy, class of 1977. My question regards service culture, and I know we never want to stereotype in any regard, but you, Logan, had positive experiences with the Air Force. You, Leila, negative experiences with the Army. Is that any way service culture related, or is that just the individuals that you happen to be assigned to at the time?
Thank you for asking the question. I laugh because I almost want to say yes. It might be the different cultures, because in the Army, any place that I've gone with Logan, everyone's so nice. They're so accommodating, like, hi, how are you? Anything you like, I do for you. So nice. In the Army, it's just like you're on your own. And I kind of had to learn that stuff. But what I will say, and that sounds negative saying that about the Army, but really the Army camaraderie that I had, even though we were rough around the edges, we were a family. And so while I want to say yes, it might be a cultural difference, I think what it boiled down to was just the leadership and their personal biases. And I think just, like this young lady here said, she talked about being a good leader and what she said. I think those are the kinds of leaders that we need, that are just willing to be open and transparent with the service member on any type of different thing. Because if you take care of your troops, the mission will take care of itself. And if you do that, apply that to everything, I think you will be on a successful path.
Right, and I just would like to add, we also have to understand that it's much more easier for somebody like me transitioning from a masculine female to a masculine male than it is for a effeminate male to transition to a female in the military. And we really do have to acknowledge that the military as a whole is more masculine. So for somebody like me to transition, it was easier. It was kind of almost effortless at times, right? And that's just the dialogue that we need to have, that open line of communication, right? I have, passing white male privilege, right? And we need to acknowledge that as well, moving forward with not only just transgender military inclusion, but just inclusion in general in the military.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, please, sir.
Thank you for being here and telling your story. Question for you. You talked a little bit about policy. What do you each see as an essential part that should be in any policy, whether it's in the military or civilian sector?
Can you say, I apologize, I didn't really hear part of that.
You made reference to policy, upcoming policy.
Yes, sir.
What would you see, as you, in your experience, would see as being an essential part that should be added to any policy, whether it's in the military or the civilian sector, dealing with transition, transgender, any of those issues?
I would say the key really to any policy is, what is best for our military? What is best for our future? What is best for, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, right? What is best for them, right? Because they're really going to be the recipe to our success going forward. And also, really hinting on respect, dignity, keeping in mind our core values as well and our warrior ethos, keeping in mind for that. I know it sounds like a simplistic answer, but it really is a simplistic answer to a problem. If that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Ma'am?
I would reiterate what he was said. Prior to the policy change in 2016, there was a lack of information, lack of resources regarding transition process or just transgender individuals. I had to learn on my own what transgender even meant, and so I think if we have more resources and more education out there, people that are knowledgeable and can actually teach us instead of having someone who is certified to teach an EO class and they know nothing about nothing about the subject. Having those subject matter experts in these trainings is important as well.
Thank you.
C1 Steve Van Humissen. The Air Force and the Department of Defense are so directive and instruction driven. Often we feel like those are made far away, away from us. I was wondering what avenues you found to advocate for policy change successfully while in uniform, where we have a somewhat limited voice and ability to advocate for a policy change or a belief.
That's actually a really good question. So the groups that you have here at USAFA, Spectrum being one of them, I know we met with some of them yesterday. That's a great place to start. When we started advocating for policy, I was an E3 stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, middle of nowhere, and it really just took reaching out and finding those small groups and saying, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm serving in silence. I'm reading the regs, and it looks like I can serve, but I just don't know how, and I don't really have that voice or that chain of command to go off of. So really starting local and then going globally from there. I know the group that we're a part of, Sparta, has been the main POC to the DoD for the policy change. And we started with a group of just 20 members, really just as a networking opportunity, and now it's grown to over 700. We have leadership all through the DoD that knows of Sparta now. So it really is just as simple as reaching out to the resources that are in your community or here at USAFA and going from there with it.
All right, we're almost out of time, so one more question from this side over here, please.
So, good morning again. So I think it's really important whenever we discuss these issues, even in private or in public platforms, everyone kind of has the same biases when they go into it. And a lot of this comes from not understanding, and that leads to a lot of fear and a lot of negativity that people feel. So you mentioned a few times that when you were growing up, like you felt male versus female, you felt female versus male. So if you had to explain that to people in the room, like what does that actually feel like? Because that's more than just wanting to play with Barbies or Legos. Like at what point, like did you know?
Well, I knew when I was a kid. Like this was how I thought. The thought process is very binary, like girls play with dolls, and that's what I identified with. Logan and I are very fortunate or I shouldn't say fortunate, we're very binary in our transition. He's very masculine, I'm very feminine. There are folks that aren't like that are transgender, that aren't very binary, they're gender queer or gender binary. And unfortunately, the military does not recognize that, right? How, going into that, I think, in that journey, trying to understand it and explore that and learn on my own was already a hard time. But having the resources out there to look into and really understand what is this that I'm feeling, what is this that I'm thinking, or having someone to turn to, a group that made it even easier for me to say, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah, really, just, I mean, everybody's transition is a little bit different. You know, at a young age, I didn't really have the dialogue to know exactly what I was or where my path would go, but some people have that, and it's great now that we have that open line of communication, you know, in the media and, you know, socially, you know, it's becoming more accepting to be more diverse. So, and we really need to, I guess, you know, hone some of those lessons learned into the military as well going forward. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
All right, before I close us with a couple of comments and pass this back to our cadets for a presentation, how about a big thank you to our panelists.
I want to say thank you again, and on behalf of the 2018 NCLS participants, the cadet wing, the faculty, and the staff of the Air Force Academy, we want to present you two with a small token of our appreciation.
All right, as you get ready to transition to your next event, a couple of things that I'd like you to think about. So kind of three issues, maybe as takeaways that you can continue this conversation on when you leave this room today, because we don't want this conversation to stop. And the first and foremost thing, you heard Logan talk about this clearly, but Leila as well, leadership matters most. When we talk about inclusion and respect for human dignity and the kinds of things that we do as military leaders, how we lead our people has dramatic impact on their careers and their lives. And you see that in two different ways with these two individuals who are on the stage today. So leadership matters most. Second thing is, our military is stronger when it's diverse. And we've seen that through the history of our military, from desegregating the military in the 1940s to talking about transgender service in the 2000s. That every time we have added a new group and allowed them to serve openly in our Air Force, we have become stronger and more lethal as a force, and that's what we need to be doing. This is about our capability as a military, and it's important for us to remember. And the third thing that I'll offer, and it's key to our country, is that we serve and support because of our allegiance to an ideal. And that ideal is embodied in the Constitution of the United States. Leila and Logan and everybody in this room in uniform, and to include our civilian airmen, have raised their right hand and supported an oath and an allegiance to support and defend the Constitution of this great nation. And that's what binds us together and allows us to have this diversity and to be effective. So think about those issues as you think about the great speakers that you'll continue to hear throughout the day today. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Do you have anything else you need to do in closing? I'll pass it over to our cadet to close us out.
Just a quick reminder, if you have the opportunity to just do feedback or go into the NCLS app and to check out the survey and do feedback for us. Thank you.